I'm going to tell you something that goes against everything your parents taught you, and that every internet financial guru preaches. But it's the most brutal truth I've learned in 50 years of observing those who really build wealth and those who spend their entire lives living in scarcity mode, thinking they're being smart. Saving money is the surest way to die poor. It's not rhetorical exaggeration. It's not clickbait. It's pure math and observation of thousands of financial trajectories that I've studied over the past 5 decades managing wealth at Bridgewater. The illusion you have been sold since you were a child is that wealth comes from cutting expenses, saving money, living below your means, and slowly accumulating it over decades. That ant mentality that gathers grain by grain as winter approaches. It sounds prudent. It sounds responsible. It sounds like advice from a wise grandfather. And that's exactly why 93% of people who follow this philosophy reach age 65 with less than $100,000 in net worth, according to Federal Reserve data from 2023. Meanwhile, the 7% who ignored this advice and understood the real game have accumulated wealth starting in 7 figures. The difference is not luck. It is not inheritance. It is not market timing. It is fundamental understanding of how wealth actually works in the economic machine. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now, because what I'm going to share in the next few weeks could be the difference between you spending the next 30 years saving 5% of your salary to have $300,000, or understanding how to multiply your capital and arrive in the same period with $3 million. Let me show you why saving is a mathematical trap disguised as a virtue. When you save $100 a month for 30 years, assuming an average return of 7% per year, which is the historical S&P 500, you end up with approximately $122,000. Sounds good until you realize that inflation averaging 3% per year means that this money has real purchasing power of just $51,000 in today's money. You worked 3 decades, denied yourself small pleasures, lived in scarcity mode to accumulate the equivalent of a year and a half of the average American salary. This is not wealth building. It is treading water disguised as progress. Now compare that to someone who took those same $100 a month, but instead of saving, invested in learning a skill that increased their income by 20% in the first year. That 20% raise on a $50,000 salary is an extra $10,000 a year. In the same period of 30 years, reinvesting salary increases in more education and training, this person ends up earning not $50,000, but $250,000 per year, and his accumulated wealth is not $122,000. It is $2.8 million. The difference is 23 times greater. 23 times. And there are still people telling me that the way to go is to cut out the $4 coffee. I've seen this happen hundreds of times. At Bridgewater, we analyzed the wealth-building trajectories of more than 5,000 high-net-worth individuals over 3 decades. Do you know how many of them built a fortune through saving their salary? Less than 2%. And those 2% were people who made over $500,000 a year. So they were saving large, absolute amounts, even though the percentages were small. The other 98% followed a completely different pattern. They spent aggressively in 3 specific areas during their 20s and 30s, accumulated temporary debt to finance education and business ventures, lived on tight margins while building income-producing assets, and only began running a consistent surplus in their 40s when their investments began to pay off. They understood what the Save 10% crowd never understands. Money sitting still is money dying. Every dollar you leave in a savings account, earning 1% while inflation erodes 3%, is $1. You are paying to maintain the illusion of security. And I want to know from you, where are you watching this video from? Leave a comment telling me your city and country, Because this illusion of economy as a virtue is global, but the consequences are different depending on the speed of destruction of the purchasing power of your local currency. And I want to understand how many are trapped in this trap in different parts of the world. Let me tell you two stories that perfectly illustrate this difference in mentality. The first is about a guy named David, who I met in 1997. Software engineer earning $75,000 a year in Seattle. Smart, disciplined guy, voracious reader of personal finance books. He followed all the right advice. He saved 15% of his income every month, cut down on unnecessary expenses, took a lunch to work, drove a 1992 Honda Civic, lived in a one-bedroom apartment even though he could afford more. 28 years later, in 2025, David has $480,000 invested. His own paid-off home valued at $600,000, and he still works as a senior engineer, earning $120,000 a year. Total net worth, $1.08 million at age 54. He did everything right according to the traditional playbook. The second story is about Jennifer. Same company, same year, same starting salary range. But Jennifer made completely different decisions. Instead of saving, she took out $20,000 in additional student loans to pursue a part-time MBA. He spent another $15,000 on product management courses and certifications, used credit cards to finance networking events and industry conferences. At 31, he had $35,000 in debt and negative net worth. Every financial advisor would have told her she was doing it all wrong. But at 33, he got a position as product manager at a startup paying $110,000 more equity. At 37, he became VP of product earning $220,000. At 42, his startup was acquired and his stock options were worth $1.3 million. Today, at 53, she is a chief product officer earning $450,000 a year plus bonuses, has a net worth of $6.7 million, and is considering early retirement. Same age as David, started from the same place. Equity difference, 6 times greater. Jennifer didn't save a penny in the first 15 years of her career. She invested aggressively in appreciating assets, the most important being herself. David saved religiously and invested in depreciating peace of mind. One built real wealth, another built the illusion of security. And here's what really bothers me about this save-at-any-cost culture. It's fundamentally based on fear and a scarcity mindset. When you prioritize saving over investing in yourself, you are telling the universe that you believe your future opportunities are worth less than your present security. You are choosing the certainty of mediocrity over the possibility of abundance. At Bridgewater, one of the fundamental principles I've developed over 5 decades is that risk and return are inseparable. There is no risk-free path to significant wealth. Zero. And saving is the illusion of a risk-free path. You think you're being conservative and prudent, but you're actually taking the biggest risk of all. Opportunity risk. The risk of reaching 60 years of age and realizing that you could have been much more, done much more, impacted much more, if you hadn't wasted the most productive decades of your life accumulating crumbs. Let me give you the real math on why investing in income-producing skills beats saving over every relevant timeline. Assume you have an extra $1,000 per month to allocate. Option A. You save and invest in index funds. With an average return of 7%, in 10 years you have $173,000. Option B. You spend this money on courses, coaching, networking, side business equipment, whatever that increases your ability to generate income. If this results in an income increase of just 15% in the second year, and you maintain that differential, in 10 years, you not only have the same $173,000 saved from the extra raises, you are also earning $25,000 more per year in perpetuity. Which asset is most valuable? The one that generates $173,000 once, or the one that generates an extra $25,000 every year until you die? The answer is obvious, but most people choose the wrong one because they don't understand the difference between wealth and income. Wealth is stock. Income is flow. You don't get rich by accumulating stock slowly. You get rich by increasing the flow dramatically. Saving focuses on stock. Investing in yourself focuses on flow. And bigger flow always beats slow accumulation in the long term. But here's where it gets even more interesting and where most fail completely. Even when people understand that investing in themselves trumps saving, they still make poor choices about where to invest. They spend $3,000 on a generic digital marketing course when they could spend $15,000 on an intensive program with direct mentoring from someone who has already built what they want to build. They choose the cheapest option because they are still operating in an economic mindset. They are trying to save even on their own investment, so it's like buying the cheapest equipment to climb Everest because you want to save money. The economy will cost you your life. I saw this in the Bridgewater story itself. In the early years, late 70s, I could have saved operational costs by keeping the team small, working from cheaper spaces, cutting investments in research. It would have been the financially conservative decision. Instead, I hired people more expensive and better than me, invested heavily in technology and data when it cost a fortune, spent on building culture and systems even when revenue barely covered costs. From 1975 to 1982, we had years where we almost went bankrupt. But every dollar not saved was a dollar invested in building what would eventually become the largest hedge fund in the world, managing $168 billion. If I had saved up, I would have a stable consultancy of 10 people. I invested aggressively. I built an institution. Now, let me anticipate the 3 objections that I know are going through your head right now, because I've heard them all hundreds of times. First objection. But Ray, I need to have an emergency fund. I need to have financial security. I can't just spend everything on investments that may not yield a return. I understand the feeling. It feels responsible. But here's the brutal truth. An emergency fund is an emotional comfort blanket disguised as financial planning. 6 months of expenses sitting in a savings account yielding 1% is 6 months of capital that could be multiplied, invested in you. And do you know what the real emergency fund is? It is your ability to generate income. If you have valuable skills and a strong network, you can replace income in weeks. If you are dependent on a job and don't have differentiated skills, 6 months of expenses will run out, and you will be unemployed for 9 months anyway. Real security does not come from having money sitting idle. It comes from the ability to produce value. Invest in becoming irreplaceable, not in building up a buffer for when you are replaced. Second objection. But not everyone can undertake or change careers. Some people need the stability of traditional employment, and saving is the only option. This is the most dangerous objection because it sounds reasonable but is fundamentally defeatist. Even if you will never leave your traditional job, investing aggressively in skills increases your earning power within that job. The engineer who takes advanced courses and earns certifications rises faster than the one who saves money on the course. An accountant who invests in specializations and networking earns 3 times more than someone who only works in the office and keeps every penny. It's not about becoming an entrepreneur. It's about investing in appreciating assets instead of accumulating depreciating cash. And the asset you appreciate most is yourself. Your productivity, your connections, your skills, your reputation, capital. Every dollar not invested in this is a dollar wasted. Third objection, and this one frustrates me the most. But Ray, you're talking from a position of privilege. You already have wealth built. Easy to say, don't save when you have millions. This does not apply to those who are starting out or those who earn little. This objection completely reverses the logic. It's exactly because you're starting out or earning little that you can't afford to save. When you have little, saving 10% of what little is almost nothing in absolute terms. $100 a month saved by someone who earns $1,000 won't change anyone's life in any relevant timeline. But $100 a month invested strategically in skill development can double your income in 3 years. And then you're saving $200 a month from your new salary of $2,000, and that starts to make a difference. The trap is to start saving when you should be investing in multiplying your earning power. Saving only makes sense after you have already maximized your income-generating capacity. And for 95% of people, that means that saving before age 40 is a fundamental strategic error. Now let me give you the framework I use to decide when to save versus when to invest, because obviously it's not binary, there is nuance. I call it the personal capital allocation matrix. I developed it by observing wealth creation patterns in thousands of cases over decades. The matrix has 2 axes. On the vertical axis, investment multiplication potential ranges from 1 to 10. On the horizontal axis, your current income-generating capacity compared to your maximum potential, also 1 to 10. If you have low current generation capacity, 1 to 4 on the horizontal axis, and identify an investment with high multiplication potential, 7 to 10 on the vertical axis, you invest 100% of the available capital, even if it means taking on smart debt. Example: you earn $30,000 a year, but a $15,000 coding bootcamp could have you earning $70,000 in 18 months. That's 9 in multiplication potential. You're at 3 in current capacity. Decision: you take out a loan, put it on your card, do whatever is necessary to do the bootcamp. Don't save, invest. If you are at medium generation capacity, 5 to 7 on the horizontal axis, and have medium potential investments available, 4 to 6 on the vertical, you allocate 70% to investment and 30% to capital accumulation that can be used in future opportunities. Example: you earn $80,000 as a manager, you can do an executive MBA that probably takes you to $120,000. Moderate multiplier: you invest heavily but maintain some buffer. If you have high generation capacity, 8 to 10 horizontally, and only see low potential investments available, 1 to 3 vertically, then you save and accumulate capital by waiting for better opportunities or starting to build a portfolio of traditional assets. Example: you are already a VP earning $300,000. Your earning power is close to the ceiling of your industry. You already have all the relevant skills. Now, saving makes sense because you have maximized the return on investment in yourself. Do you notice the pattern? Saving is a late-game strategy, not an early game. It's what you do after optimizing earning power, not before. But the personal finance industry sells saving as a universal strategy because it's simple to teach and makes people feel virtuous. Strategically investing in yourself is complex, requires self-knowledge and courage, and can fail. That's why few teach it, and even fewer practice it. Let me show you how this works in different income ranges, because I know some people are thinking this only applies to those who already earn well. I'm going to use 3 real examples of people I've advised over the years, changing names but keeping real numbers. First, Maria, 26 years old, receptionist, making $2,200 a month in Denver. Negative net worth of $8,000 in student loan debt. He came to ask me if he should take a certification program in UX design that cost $6,000 and would take 8 months. She could save $200 a month. She would pay off the program in 30 months. So should she wait or do it now by taking on more debt. Every traditional financial advisor would say, wait, pay off your debts first, then save for college. Be responsible. I said the opposite. Take the course now. Borrow the $6,000 if necessary. Because every month you wait is one less month earning a UX designer salary. She followed the advice, finished the program, got a junior UX position paying $4,800 a month 6 months later. 18 months after starting the course, I was earning $6,500 a month. In 3 years, he paid off all his debts, including the $6,000 for the course, and was saving $1,000 a month. If I had waited to save first, I would still be saving money to take the course. The temporary debt of $6,000 brought her 3 years ahead on the wealth-building timeline. Second example, James, 38 years old, operations manager, earning $85,000 a year. Equity of $120,000 in retirement accounts. He had the opportunity to buy a 10% stake in a business for $50,000. The business was already profitable. It planned to pay $10,000 a year in dividends, 5 years of payback. But $50,000 was almost half of his assets. Standard decision would be conservative. Too much risk, excessive concentration, maintain diversification. I looked at it differently. James had operational expertise relevant to the business. He could add value beyond capital. The business was in an industry he deeply understood. This wasn't speculation. It was investing in something where he had edge. He invested the $50,000. 5 years later, the business was worth 5 times as much. His share was worth $500,000. The annual dividends were $32,000. That single investment of $50,000 created more wealth than his 2 decades of saving for retirement accounts. Why? Because he invested where he had advantage and knowledge. He didn't just diversify generally. Third example, Sarah, 51 years old, dentist who owns her own clinic. Income of $280,000 per year. Assets of $1.2 million, mostly in real estate and retirement accounts. I spent about $200,000 a year, saved $80,000. Very comfortable, clear path to retirement at 65 with $3 million. She asked me if she should invest $150,000 in state-of-the-art equipment that would allow her to offer specialized procedures with better quality. Much larger margin. It made economic sense, payback of 3 years, but it meant reducing your safety buffer significantly. Traditional decision. It's not worth the risk at this age. You're already comfortable. Stay the course. My analysis. Sarah had 15 productive years ahead of her. Equipment would put her in another tier of revenue and allow her to sell the clinic for a much higher multiple when she decided to leave. She invested. Revenue rose to $420,000 in the second year. She sold the clinic 7 years later for $3.8 million. The investment of $150,000 added more than $1 million to the sales valuation. If I had only saved the $80,000 a year like I planned, I would have had an extra $640,000. Strategic investment generated almost twice as much wealth. 3 people, 3 completely different situations, same principle. Investing strategically in appreciating assets beats saving defensively. Maria invested in herself. James invested in a business where he had expertise. Sarah invested in her own business. None simply saved and waited. They all multiplied their wealth faster than they would have saved. Now here's what separates those who apply this successfully from those who fail trying. Discernment about what is real investment versus spending disguised as investment. Because once you accept the principle of investing instead of saving, the next risk is justifying every expense as an investment. Buying a $3,000 course that you never complete is not an investment. It is an emotional expense. Spending $5,000 on side business equipment that you never launch is not an investment. It's expensive procrastination. Doing an MBA worth $100,000 at a Tier 3 school that doesn't open doors is not an investment. It's expensive credentialism. The filter is simple but requires brutal honesty. Does this expense have a realistic probability of increasing my earning power or asset base by a multiple greater than the cost within a defined timeline? If yes, it is an investment. If not, it is spent. $2,000 public speaking course for salespeople who need to close bigger deals? Clear investment? Same course for an introverted engineer who doesn't plan to change fields? Probably emotional expense. $1,000 a month executive coaching for a manager who wants to become a VP? Investment if the coach has a track record of raising clients. Even coaching for people without clear objectives? Expensive therapy in disguise. And here's the litmus test I use. Are you willing to measure the return? Real investments have measurable ROI. If you're not willing to track whether that expense increased your income, measurably improved your skills, or built an asset with verifiable value, then you already know it's not a real investment. It's an expense you want to justify. Real investors measure returns. Spenders avoid measuring so they don't have to admit they wasted money. Let me give you the 5 categories of personal investment that historically have the highest return, based on an analysis we did at Bridgewater of high net worth individuals and their trajectories. First category, and by far the most valuable, investment in skills that are scarce and valuable in the current economy. Not generic skills that anyone can learn in a weekend, but capabilities that take months or years to develop and that few have. Examples: ability to sell to enterprise clients with 6-figure deals, ability to manage complex engineering projects with multiple stakeholders, expertise in a specific technical domain, such as machine learning applied to healthcare, ability to raise capital for startups. These skills pay multiples of 3 to 10 times compared to commodity skills. Investing $10,000 and 6 months to develop one of these can increase lifetime earnings by $500,000 to $2 million. 50 to 200 to 1 ROI. No financial investment comes close. Second category, investment in network and relationship capital with people who are where you want to be. This means industry conferences, mastermind groups, professional associations, even moving to the city where your industry is concentrated. People grossly underestimate the value of being in the same room as decision makers. I invested heavily in this. In my 20s, I went to every event where people who mattered would be present, even when I could barely afford it. A single right relationship can change your entire trajectory. I'm not talking about superficial networking, collecting cards. I'm talking about investing time and money to be in environments where you naturally meet and build real relationships with people who can open doors that are impossible to open alone. This investment is difficult to quantify, but I would say that half of the most important opportunities in my life have come from relationships that cost money and time to cultivate. Third category, investment on credentials and signposts that open specific doors you need to open. This isn't about collecting diplomas because, yes, it's strategic. If you want to work in venture capital, a top school MBA is a credential that opens doors that no amount of hustle can open. If you want to be a therapist, a PhD is a non-negotiable requirement. If you want to sell to Fortune 500 companies, prior experience selling to similar companies is a credential that is worth more than any pitch. The key is to be surgical. Identify exactly which door you need to open. Find out which credential opens that door specifically. Invest only in that. Don't make generic certifications expecting them to open undefined doors. Fourth category, investment in tools and equipment that multiply your productivity or output quality. For a writer, this could be advanced research software or a professional editing service. For photographers, equipment that allows them to work in conditions that amateurs cannot. For consultants, data analysis tools that deliver insights in hours rather than days. The return here comes from allowing you to produce more or better in the same time. If a $5,000 tool allows you to serve 3 additional clients per month at $2,000 each, it paid for itself in 1 month. Most spend more time trying to save on tools than the value they lose in reduced productivity. Fifth and often forgotten category: investment in health and energy. Your earning power is directly proportional to your energy and cognitive capacity. Investing in a personal trainer, quality food, adequate sleep, and preventative health treatment is not a luxury. It is a business necessity. I know executives who save $100 a month on gym memberships but lose hundreds of thousands on bad decisions made in a state of burnout and mental fog. Your body and mind are the machine that produces all the value. Premium maintenance of this machine has infinite ROI. These 5 categories are not expenses. They are investments with measurable returns and generally much higher than any financial investment you would make with the same capital. And here's what most don't realize. These investments, compounded over a decade, create differential wealth that no amount of savings can match. Because you are not just accumulating capital, you are increasing the rate at which you generate capital. It's the difference between having savings of $100,000 that yields $7,000 per year and having earning power that generates an extra $100,000 per year. Which do you prefer? Now here's the most important part, and where most people give up. The first few years of aggressively investing in yourself are brutally difficult psychologically. You are taking risk, spending money you could save, watching colleagues accumulate savings while you have low or even negative net worth. You question whether you are doing the right thing, especially when investment does not give immediate returns. This is normal and expected. Everyone who builds significant wealth goes through this phase. I went through years of nearly bankrupting Bridgewater while aggressively investing in research and people. It seemed crazy. In retrospect, it was the only possible decision. But at the moment, scary. The difference between those who persist and those who give up is clarity about the end goal. If you are saving, your goal is to accumulate bank account numbers. Progress is linear and visible. It gives you a monthly dopamine hit. If you are investing in yourself, the goal is to multiply earning power. Progress is non-linear and can be invisible for years, then explodes. It's like planting a tree. First 5 years, nothing apparent. Year 10, shadow and fruit for a lifetime. Most give up in year 3 because they don't see trees growing. Let me be brutally honest about who shouldn't follow this advice, because there is a profile of people for whom saving is the correct strategy, and I need to be honest about that. First category: people who have already maximized their earning power and are in the preservation phase. If you are already earning in the top 15% of your profession, have already developed all the relevant skills, already have the necessary network, and are between 45 and 65 years old, then yes, saving aggressively and investing in a diversified portfolio makes sense. You have optimized earning power. Now it is compound time. Second category: people who genuinely do not have the capacity or interest in developing higher earning skills. This is rare, but it exists. Some people have cognitive or health limitations, or simply found a calling in a low-income profession that they love and don't want to change. For these people, maximizing the savings rate of what they earn is the correct strategy. Third category: people in such a precarious situation financially that any additional risk could result in homelessness or catastrophe. See, you owe money to loan shark? If you are 1 month away from losing your housing, if you have dependents counting on you to survive, then the priority is stabilization, not multiplication. In this case, some level of emergency savings makes sense, before investing aggressively. But here's the critical thing. These three categories combined are less than 20% of the population. The other 80% are saving out of fear, not strategy. They are leaving wealth on the table because they have been conditioned to see saving as a virtue and spending as a sin, even when